Welcome back to Conversations with Ken. I'm Sean Gray, Ken McElroy here. And this whole conversations that we have, we want to talk about stuff that's real, stuff that everyday entrepreneurs struggle with, have to work through. And not just entrepreneurs, but anybody who wants to have success in business and in life. And a lot of times people get so caught up in the content and the details and learning the information. But really, that's not really the hardest part of entrepreneurship or starting a business or trying to succeed at anything. The hard part is really managing your emotions, managing your ego, dealing with people, and the psychology of growing, really. So today we're going to talk about how it's really hard to separate personal development from your business success or any other area of your life. And oftentimes a big thing that holds us back is belief systems that we have, and some that we're not even aware of that we have. But so how do we go about shifting those paradigms? How do we go about breaking those beliefs that we have that aren't serving us, those habits that we have, and in implementing or instilling new paradigms that'll set us up for success?
Wow, that's a complicated question.
Yeah, it wasn't really a question in there. I was just opening up the conversation too.
I think the first thing is people need to first recognize and be aware that they're bringing things into relationships. So whatever that is. So whether it's a relationship with your family or a relationship with a spouse or a significant other or even a business relationship. There are certain things that, I call them charges, that they're, like events in your life where, maybe, for example, maybe you lent somebody some money once and they never paid you back.
So, like a trigger.
That's a trigger.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And so, so now all of a sudden you have a negative connotation around that from that one event. And rightly so, and so I think if you're aware of, or maybe you got dumped, and it broke your heart or something, and so you're now closed down and you have walls around it, whatever it is, or maybe you got yelled at by your parents or your father or your mother and said you'll never amount to anything, or whatever it is.
Right.
Those are serious issues. Maybe you grew up with an alcoholic parent. Maybe you grew up with an abusive parent. Maybe you grew up with no parents. Whatever it is, those are serious issues. They're not serious issues. They're things that once you're aware of, and then so when you roll out to wherever you roll out, you have that in your head. And I'm not saying that they're not real either.
Right.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it could potentially change the way that you're interacting with whoever it is next.
Right.
Yeah.
So these paradigms that we have are a product of our environment?
They could be, yeah. Or something even you read or watch on TV, or they could be even habits.
Right.
You develop these habits. We talked about the Power Habit book.
Right.
They could be something that you just fell into, like going home and getting a glass of wine every night, right? Which turns into two, which turns into a bottle, which turns into a failed marriage, which what I mean.
Right.
So it's really honestly that simple.
Right.
And it could be the same thing with anything. And I used to live in Las Vegas. We had people that would move there for work, and they would start gambling, and then they would be gambling a lot, and then they would lose all their life savings, and so I'm just saying, those are really big examples, but they're real examples. And so, going back to anything that you have any kind of charge or trigger around, I think needs to be dealt with.
Right. So you're saying the first step sounds like the 12-step program, right? You got to recognize what the problem is. You got to be aware of it, right? Or recognize the belief that's not serving you. Is that right?
Yeah, and it might be serving you. This is we can talk about religion. Not that I want to get too far into it, but I go to a number of churches. My son goes to a Catholic high school. I grew up Lutheran, and right now I'm going to a Christian church, for example. They're all different.
Right.
in every way. They're just different. Now, generally, they're all spiritually based, but at the end of the day, they're very different.
Right.
And so, when you grow up one way, you don't think outside any differently. That's what I'm saying. So religion is a great example. I have many friends that grew up Mormon. They grew up that way, right? And their belief system was what it was. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that, and so you carry that into whatever it is you're doing next. And there's a series of judgments and a series of beliefs and a mindset based around that. That's all. And so, if you can walk into a situation, I think, with an open mind, because honestly, you might be sitting at the table with somebody that's Jewish and somebody that's in the Mormon faith and somebody who's in the Catholic faith at one dinner table. And, so how do you converse? You know what I mean? I mean, if you're coming from such a fixed mindset of I'm right, you're wrong, then honestly, it's a waste of time.
Right.
It just is a waste of time.
Well, that's a good point. If I'm right, you're wrong. I know, especially as a young man getting started in business, you were just talking about the conversation you had with another young man, kind of at that point, or it doesn't necessarily even have to be young men, but just if you've been in a certain way of thinking for so long, or things have gotten a certain way for you, you expect them to be that way, and so you think that your way is right? When you're getting into business, obviously that doesn't serve you.
I think you said it. I think when you believe that your way is right, I think that's your biggest issue on in everything. Right. So, with the best thing you can ever do at any time is to listen and ask questions, always trying to mold or change your own opinion of whatever it is you have. You don't have to abandon it.
Right.
I think you have to have an opinion. You have to be anchored in your own belief system. But you should also be open, at least a little bit, to, maybe I will look at that, or maybe I will look at that. You don't have to agree, even.
Right.
But you should at least consider it.
Right.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of people is they get so focused on their belief system. Their belief system actually creates our mindset, obviously, and then from there. That's their self-concept. That's who they are. Their self-concept is a result of their beliefs.
Right. So how does, you have these belief systems, obviously it's going to manifest in your business, right? Has there ever been a time when or maybe an example, you've had this belief system that you really thought was serving you and was really doing the best, and you ran into kind of a brick wall while manifesting your business, like, hey, I have to abandon this?
Yeah, well, I think one of the questions I get the most is around raising money, for example. Right. A lot of people think money is evil, and then there's some people that love money, which is also a problem.
Right.
But I think when I started in real estate investing, I believed that I needed a bunch of money in the bank in order to start, and. That's because I grew up with none. My parents didn't have any really. Neither of my parents went to college, and I barely finished high school. So I didn't grow up with money, and so but that was my belief. If I wanted to buy real estate, I used to have. And so my obstacle, or my crutch, was that okay, I can't even do this until I have this money.
Right.
That's one of the bigger ones out there for people. So it's easy to say that, well, I'm not going to learn about real estate because I don't have any money to invest anyway, so I won't, And so, but really it's quite the opposite. Once I learned how real estate worked, which, by the way, I got most of that knowledge for free, and I understood deals from a deal side of, and how they work, then I was able to identify the deals, and then the money came.
Right.
So the money flows to things that work. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it flows away from things that don't work. We have this saying. The bigger the brochure, the worse the deal. Right. So if you really have to paper it up and sell the heck out of it, the chances of it probably being really good are low.
Right.
And not always, but in a lot of cases. And so that was one of my beliefs when I grew up. my mom always said, we can't afford that. I remember standing in the aisles at grocery and looking at all the cool stuff,
Right.
They put it there for a reason.
Right.
I'm like, hey, can we have this? Can we have that? Can we have this? Whatever. She's like, we can't afford that. We can't afford that. We can't afford that. Right. So I think a lot of people grew up that way too.
Right.
And so that's a belief system.
Right. Whereas the flip side of that, as Robert says, is how can I afford that, right? Opens your mind up to the possibilities.
It does. It doesn't quite get you there, but it's a step.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's a great one, but it could be it could be I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it's just goofy how people fall into those, and they label themselves.
Right.
I think the worst thing you can do is label people or yourself.
And I think a lot of those labels that people put on themselves or other people is really fear-based, and it's the fear of what other people might think of them. Is it Turning Pro? I think we did a book study on that, and he talks about being excluded from the tribe. Right?
Yeah. I think people want to fit in generally, and I you go into my kid's in high school right now. He's a junior. Like every single person has a label, right?
Right.
Seriously, whether they like it or not,
right.
And it's hysterical to me to watch. I had dinner with him and his girlfriend 2 nights ago, and we were talking about this. I'm like, so, who do you hang out with? And she's like, well, there's the good girls, and then there's the skanks. I started laughing, she's 16, right?
Yeah.
Telling me this story, and I'm like, oh my gosh. It's the exact same way when I went to school, and she's like, there's the jocks, and then there's the skanks that want to hang out with the jocks, and I was totally laughing, because I was like, oh my gosh. But it was real to her, you know, and they were talking about homecoming and, blah, 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 and all the things that are important to them right now.
Right.
And, and I think as you move up, you continue that, right? And, the worst thing you could do is label somebody, and it happens all the time. A physical appearance is important.
Sure.
Unfortunately. But, but I think, like if an overweight person comes into the conference room, right or wrong, no matter how smart they are, there's a connotation around that. And there shouldn't be.
Right.
There just shouldn't be, right? And there is. And so I think, that's a great a label. Same with, somebody from of a different color, and it works the other way around. Like I've traveled all over. When I went to Africa and climbed Kilimanjaro, I was a minority there. You know what I mean? And but I didn't actually really think about it. You know what I mean? I just didn't really think about it. And so it is a mindset.
Right.
It really is a mindset.
So how do you get over that limiting belief of caring what other people think about? Because I really think that's a big one that holds a lot of people back.
I think when you attach, I think there's a level of attachment to it. Like when I think everybody's going through a lot themselves personally. Just everybody's got all kinds of crap going on.
Sure.
All the time.
Yeah.
Right. All the time.
But in the world of social media and all this, everybody puts out their highlight reel, and it makes it easier to compare yourself to everybody else.
If you do.
So how do you get over the fact, because it's in your face all the time?
Yeah. Well, I think again when you fall into the illusion of that, for example. It happens a lot with young women, you know what I mean? And they're looking at girls on the covers of magazines and, girls on Instagram. If you internalize that, then it can be negative. You don't have to. It's the same, but at 16 years old or 15 years old or 17 years old.
You're impressionable.
You are. Yeah, you are. And I think that you just need to get over that. And you need to be aware of it first. And then, basically break that habit or break that trigger. And, you don't have to have that purse. You don't have to have that dress. You don't have to have those shoes. You don't have to be skinny. I mean, you're genetically who you are. And ultimately, what makes people most attractive are them. Very, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like that, the physical part goes away quickly after, and then it just becomes like, who are you?
Right. Yeah, that's a great comparison to the whole money thing. Why people do things for the money, and people do things for an actual reason that they're compelled by, because the money can come and go, and then who are you at the end of the day?
Yeah, and if you're wrapped up in your identity around money, then you'll be crushed. That's why people crash hard. That's exactly why. They're tied up in. I laugh because people put their cars and what they're buying and all that crap and on social media and all that, and really truly, if they have a trip and fall, and then they throw a nice little quote out there like "Be who you are" or "Be present." I was laughing. You know what I mean? But if they trip and fall, they're screwed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you watch these. I mean, not to pick on beautiful women, but women that are in their early 20s or whatever. Once they hit their early 30s or mid 30s, they start. They're not who they were, and they. I think have to, if they're solid, at the 25 years old, they're going to be fine. But if they're hanging on all that material crap that, same with guys, same thing. You can see it on, a lot of guys are, attracted to money and travel and, all those kinds of things. The minute they don't have that or don't have that around, they're nobody.
Right.
And I think that, you got to work all that out because the world doesn't really care.
Right.
And at some point you are going to get older, you are going to get bigger, and you're going to need healthy relationships are not based on any of that stuff. That's all an illusion.
Right. So we're talking about a little bit about kind of the psychology of growth, really, growth in business, growth personally, and really how it's hard to separate the two of those. Why do you think it is that it's so hard to separate personal development from financial success?
Well, I think because people think they're different. I don't think they're different.
The answer was in the question.
Yeah, I really don't think they're different. Right. As a young man, I did this. I think that a lot of people focus on money. Everybody seems to be, even though we all think we're so different, but everybody gets out of school or maybe they don't go to school. They're all trying to make a living, and they all, and so all of that is part of the evolution. But if you're not developing yourself personally, you have a lot of short-term relationships. If you don't understand money, you're going to have a short-term relationship with money. If you don't understand people, you're going to have a short-term relationship with them. Same thing with a spouse. Same thing with a girlfriend, or yourself, right? Yeah, and same thing spiritually. So, and health,
right?
So I think that all of that. I think it's all together. And I think people like to focus on finance because, it's very aware. People are very aware of it.
Right. It's tangible.
It's tangible. You can see it. You can see houses and cars and boats and planes and all.
It's harder to see your emotions.
Yeah, because you can hide behind it. And
right.
And people don't know the demons going on and all the negative stuff that's going on. And a lot of people will never know.
Right.
But it shows up, and when you're in your 20s, you don't really see all that, and then, but it starts to show up as you get older. Right. Like it just shows, we studied this thing at Rich Dad. Actually, we went to a ranch in Texas to study what's called ascension. And, when people ascend. And so, and what's interesting is like we've all seen like as let's just pick on an NFL football player, as they ascend, what's important to them comes out.
Right.
Drugs, girls, car, right? Like,
or vice versa, charities.
Yeah, or right, like Larry Fitzgerald, one of my favorite all-time players. What's important to him, and he'll tell you, was his relationship with his mom. He still carries her license in his wallet, and charity, and all, and relationships. He stayed with the Arizona Cardinals the entire time. You know what I mean? And so you get that kind of difference, And that's why everybody loves him.
Right.
And so it's really there, like if you are aware. And so as you ascend, you can use the platform for good and for bad, but whatever your value system is will come out. So whatever, you know what I mean? Like we've been, my family's been involved in a couple churches where, as the pastor ascended and had all the power over the congregation, it wasn't used for good.
Seen that before.
It's happened twice in my family, but I've also seen it where it's incredibly used for good. I mean, I know 2 local pastors, they're amazing, and their heart really is in the right spot.
Right.
But they have power. You have power. I have power right now with the real estate and the investors and my employees and, with the Rich Dad platform. So does Robert Kiyosaki. And so, you can screw that up like that.
Right.
With one wrong move. And so that's what we call, that's what we study. It's called ascension.
Right.
And you can do that, sometimes mid management or low management and move into high management. You can be the CEO of a company like Uber. And he ascended, right? And you saw what happened to Uber. Right. And the stock price, everything else. So those things don't surprise me anymore because the value system for that person at Uber, I obviously don't know anything about him, but it showed up later. The same thing with Elliot Spitzer and all these other people, Bill Clinton.
Right.
Seriously, right?
Yeah. So how do you, and this may be kind of a out there question, but how do you manage building a brand and positioning yourself with, with also being very true to your values? Because a lot of times the true values, aren't the sexy thing to lead with, or it seems that way in a lot of the marketing out there. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's, you said it. It seems that way.
Yeah.
I think the most impressive people are the ones that stick to their values, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The ones that I like to hang out with. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean even that their values are your values.
Right.
But the ones that, like for the greatest example is Robert's sister, Tenzin, went into the Peace Corps and Robert went into the Marine Corps. Literally.
That's funny.
Those are 2 true stories.
Yeah.
And I think that, she became a nun, and he became a Marine.
Right.
He loved it and she loved it.
Right.
So you don't have to be something that you don't want to be. And I think that's the biggest thing is they followed the paths they wanted to follow. And that's actually what you should do. Right.
And that's a great path to not caring about what other people think too. Just wholeheartedly pursue yourself.
That's the biggest issue, I think. Yeah. That's when you start to compromise yourself or who you are, then that's when I think that's your biggest issue is, you start to fall into this. That's why everybody hates their jobs, well, not everybody, but a lot of people, this is why I tell my son when he's, there's a lot of pressure at his high school to pick, even in college, to pick who you're going to be. And I'm like, don't pick who you want to be. Right. Keep an open mind and go through class and see what you like and see what see what topics you like. And and there's so much pressure. And I think what happens a lot of times is, I remember he had a career day in high school, and the teachers were like, I want to be all the kids were like, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this, I want to be that. And Kyle's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And the teacher's like, well, that's not a position.
That's not a position.
And so he came home and he's telling me the story, and that's all I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of pressure at every level to pick something. Right. And it just removes that uncomfortableness. Okay, this is what I'm going to be. Right. And then they move toward it, and they realize that maybe they're not very happy. I've seen it with nurses, I've seen it with doctors, I've seen it with engineers, I've seen it with lawyers, a lot with lawyers. Yeah. That
sparks a question for me. So let me ask you this. Can your values change?
I think they can. You know, I think that's why what we were talking about before. You know, when you value something, like if you value money, which I think a lot of people do when they get out of high school or college, I think that you have to look at that as one example.
Right.
I think that if you're not valuing your family, I think that that's something that you can readjust priorities all the time. Is that what you mean?
Well, that's one way to look at it, but I'm thinking more of your values in terms of qualities and characteristics. Like, for example, we're talking about Larry Fitzgerald. Loyalty is probably a high value of his. For all we know, he could have some crazy circumstance in life where he gets absolutely betrayed, and now loyalty is just out the window for him, and now people get hurt and they put up that wall around their heart. Now their values are changing based off their experiences, whether it serves them or whether it doesn't. Can your experiences shape your values? And so you're maybe positioning yourself and you're building this brand and this reputation based off of these values that are important to you at time. Then you have experiences in life, and now, these other values are kind of taking precedent over these ones. That type of thing. Can values change?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think circumstance does change, the way you think. Again, we're going back to your beliefs and your mindset and your self-concept. And so, yeah, absolutely. But I think that, if you change that much, then I think, you potentially don't really know who you are.
Right.
And
people are in that place.
They are. Yeah. And that's why, honestly, even today, I'm still searching, constantly reading and listening to things and constantly molding, who I am and who I want to be. Because ultimately the hardest question in life is, who are you?
Right.
That's actually the hardest question.
Exactly. And it's a question that a lot of people skip over. Because, when I got out of school, I saw all my friends asking me, what do I do now to make money? What do you do to make money? What do you do to make... It's a wrong question, right? Because it makes money the end goal, makes doing something, exchanging your time and effort as the means to get that money, right? A better question to start with is, who am I? Who do I want to be? And then from there, build everything around that.
Right. What's most important to you?
Right.
At the time, and I think that if you always are trying to serve the highest and best use of other people, you'll always be fine.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people have that same philosophy. I think a lot of people are out for themselves. I get that. It is a dog-eat-dog world, but if you look at the people that are most revered and have legacy, like a Larry Fitzgerald, Larry, and I've met him multiple times, but he is a team player. You know what I mean? And a lot of his core beliefs, come from obviously a number of things, including his mom. Obviously, she raised a great kid. And you should look at somebody like that and you want to emulate. Because there's a guy that's incredibly successful, has an incredible platform,
right,
has ascended to the highest level, has the most respect for anybody, obviously is going to make the Hall of Fame. And you know what I mean? I mean, it's really that simple. I mean, you've got a guy like that you would or should want to emulate.
Right.
He's doing what he wants, and obviously not all of us have that kind of talent. But you can be that in something else.
Right.
You can. You just really can.
Yeah.
In real estate investing or an entrepreneur or whatever you want. You can be, a financial planner, a lawyer, whatever, with great values,
right,
I think.
Right. One of those values being constant growth, right?
Yeah, constant growth, constant change.
Yeah. Not being attached to this is who I am, this is how it is.
Yeah, and have the faith and be able to address situations like the one you brought up, to be able to just look at that for what it is and not necessarily attach to it, because there are things that are going to happen day to day. You're going to get betrayed for sure,
right,
in your life, right? You will lose money. You will go through ups and downs in relationships, and you will get hurt, and you will. I mean, there's just so many things. You will get lied to, and there'll be all these things that will just happen, for sure, in your life. And if you take it on and throw a block up, man, you're screwed.
Right.
You are.
Yeah.
Because then you're just like, okay, that'll never happen to me again. And if it is continually happening, like we know these, like I know friends that they always seem to be hanging around all this drama all the time. Like, call them what you want. Like, there's drama and chaos that follow people around. If you look at those people, what they say, what they do, it makes complete sense to me. I don't know if there's karma or not.
Right.
But what I do know is the way they communicate with people, the relationships they have with people, the things that they do or don't do, if they're self-centered or not, it all makes sense. It's everything for them is, energy, and they're not giving anything back to anybody ever.
Right.
And and I think it's that simple.
Well, there you go. Another good conversation.
All right. Okay, bro.
There you have it. Another good conversation with Ken, talking about a couple key takeaways. One, you can't really separate the financial success and personal development. And if you keep personal development and growth, don't get attached to anyone. This is the way it is. Don't put yourself in a box. Be open to change. And like Larry Fitzgerald, like you, and like most successful people, keeping others the focus, you're bound to have success. So comment below what you thought on the video. If you have any questions, if you want to see any type of other videos on any topics, let us know what those are. Comment below, and we'll see you next time.